So instead of our usual rank punditry round that we would do typically, we are actually going to go to the movies or the TV, or actually in my case, to the streaming video. It's Siskel and Ebert at the campaign ads with the lovely and talented Scott Spradling, marketing entrepreneur and maven. Is that marketing maven? Can I call you a marketing maven? Would that work?
Just like maven. I think that's perfect, Michael. Let's add that title.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I'm the maestro, supposedly. So
You are the maestro.
And I wanted to have on because I want to be very clear about this. This is not what candidates we like. It's not whose policies we support. It's not who we think is going to win. We are just rating these ads the way you would rate a movie. And so, Scott, I'd like to go first if I can.
Go for it.
Because I want to give a big thumbs up to what I think is the best ads, or actually a couple of ads that go together. And that's the Hollie Noveletsky ads about, made in America, America first. And she's in the factory. Just to be clear, if you have, like I do, YouTube TV or something like that, you've seen these ads a bazillion times because they're all over digital.
No doubt.
If you're only watching broadcast TV, I don't know that Hollie Noveletsky, the Republican in the 1st Congressional District, has even put this ad on broadcast TV. But here's the reason, and this will kind of set the baseline for what we're doing. The reason why I think it's the best ad of the many fine and not so fine ads is it is the one with the most clear message. I am the MAGA candidate in this race, period. That's her message. And whether she's referencing illegal immigrants or boys and girls sports, whatever, she's the messaging that she's in a factory. And of course she owns an actual, real on paper, you go, wow, what a candidate. She makes iron. Holy moly. We talk about a great, Republican, on trade or whatever. She's owning the MAGA message. And so that's why I think it's the best ad. Some of the other ads, we're going to talk about this, try to do multiple things. They try to say, hi, here's who I am. Hi, here's what I've done. Hi, here's what I want to do. That's a lot in 30 seconds. Scott Spradling, I think that's the best ad I've seen so far this cycle.
I think it's a really good one. And strategically, what I do like about it, and I agree with you, I think they're well produced. They're very clear on where she stands. And I do think that they align very, very much with the type of Republican voter that's going to turn out in the first CD in the September primary. Mm-hmm. What I think I like strategically the most about it is she's somewhat effectively working to hijack the fact that Donald Trump has endorsed her opponent,
that's true,
Anthony DiLorenzo.
Exactly.
And she's aligning so closely with his agenda and message that there may be a number of people who maybe don't remember or think, well, maybe she's the one who's closely aligned. So I think strategically it's also very smart how she put it together.
Yeah, and it also explains why if you're getting mail from Anthony DiLorenzo, there are a lot of photos of him and Trump. Trump is all over him in the mail. So he's going to make sure that he's the Trump candidate. What do you think is the best ad you've seen so far?
Honestly, Michael, I really like the Kelly Ayotte for governor ad.
We've kept New Hampshire moving in the right direction. We've passed new laws to speed up housing construction. Now we're building more than ever. We got cell phones out of our schools. Parents and teachers love it.
It's fine, whatever.
Number one, I think in terms of the vibe check, I think she takes from the theme of what we saw successfully done by Chris Sununu back in the day when he was introducing himself by personality, running on his record once he was going for re-election, highlighting those issues that are most closely aligned that we've seen in the polls with where voters' mindsets are right now and what it is that they care about. And she successfully, like she did in the last cycle, uses a little bit of humor. So like with the cell phone ban piece and the teenager kid is like, yeah, whatever. And it's sort of like a little dig at mom, if you will. I think that's effective. She starts with the issue of housing, which has consistently in New Hampshire been a top priority item for the voters. So she's running a general election campaign in this primary ad, if you will, but it's reestablishing a little bit of a connection of her agenda and priorities to where people of New Hampshire feel the work needs to be done. I find that to be effective. And with the turn of the twist of humor, 2 years ago, we were joking about who in the family snores among the Ayottes, and now we're talking about sort of the twist of humor on the cell phone ban. I just think it's an effective ad, and it shows her in the warmest possible light.
So a couple of things. One is for people who don't know, Kelly Ayotte actually has Republican primary opponents. You've never heard of them. They're not doing any campaigning, but there will be names on the ballot besides Kelly Ayotte for governor. So just so people know. Secondly, I agree with this. What's funny, I've talked to several campaign professionals and asked before we recorded this, just what thoughts on it. And this ad came up again and again. And one of the things people note, like you said, she uses third person humor. In other words, She's just there saying, I support, I brought you the cell phone ban in schools. Somebody else does the comedy. In those 2 years ago,
Right.
somebody else does the comedy. Kelly Ayotte, she's got a lot of skills. She's very smart. I don't think anybody is going to say, that she's she's not Donald Trump. You know what I mean? Like, she's not hey, work the mic, right? Shucky, shucky, she's,
Sure.
that's just not who she is. And so instead of trying to, be someone she's not, she handles the pitch. Here's what I've done. Big smile. Someone else handles the laughs. That's pretty smart. I also will tell you, I confess a failure. I always think, what ads would I do? Like, by the way, any of the candidates, I have a million ad ideas for you from back when I ran campaigns for a living. I would not have put the cell phone ban in the ad. It wouldn't have occurred to me. And my lovely bride, Buttercup, who does not follow politics at all, I've asked her to watch some of these ads. I love that cell phone ban in school. I love that. That's fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a smart issue. You know what that tells me? That tells me that they have data, that they've been asking the voters, what are we doing that you like and that's important to you? And so, like you just said, housing, and then out of nowhere, who's talking about the cell phone ban? It's not like Cinde Warmington's campaigning against it or anything, but it's in the ad, and I think it works.
Yeah, the only media, Michael, that I've seen about it is teachers themselves saying, "Thank goodness, it was time," and so I think that I think it's an effective ad, and you're right, they did a lot of homework to put that together. And
so now we got to wait. We got to stop. I cannot be in front of a microphone this long without being negative. I just can't. It's just not humanly possible for me. So can we flip the page now?
Sure.
And I want to ask you about a broad thing. This isn't necessarily negative. This is more like a question. Christian Urrutia is a progressive running in the 1st Congressional District. His ad is him rucksacking. He is, I think, got an American flag or in his military gear or shirt or whatever, like the whole ad. Like the whole ad has this military background. Maura Sullivan, who literally served in Iraq during the Battle of Fallujah. Wow, incredible. Thank you for your service. Worked in the Obama Veterans Department. It's all good. Her ad is full of military imagery. And I just, once again, this is not about anybody's politics. When I think of the progressive voters who are out electing Abdul El Sayed and Mandami and the crazy lady in New York, Chevalier, whatever, and all these other people, I just don't see them as, hey, rock the vets.
You bring up a really good point.
I don't see them watching Schwarzenegger movies over the weekend. Once again, I'm not saying that they're unpatriotic or everything. I'm just saying that's not. It would be like saying, it'd be like showing up at a Republican event wearing your "Save the Earth, Go Green Now" T-shirt. There's some Republicans who are in that thing, but that's not their vibe. And I just wanted to ask you, as a marketing professional, does that make is there a thing there, or is that just me?
No, that's honestly, Michael, I feel like that was the thing that jumped out to me as well. As well produced as the Maura Sullivan ad is, and we all know that if you've got dogs and or kids in an ad, it warms you up. And Maura with her family images at the end of her bio intro ad, it's sweet. And again, that's a strong general election advertisement. But to your point, it does raise some questions about how that might land with the more liberal wing, the more progressive wing of the party. And it has nothing to do with Maura Sullivan's service to the country and the service and sacrifice. I think everybody appreciates it and admires it. But in terms of the connections, when you're talking about what's going on in Iran and the overwhelming public desire to resolve that, with what's going on in the Middle East, and especially when it comes to the Democratic primary and where candidates are falling on issues between Israel and Hezbollah, that's a complicated conversation for a lot of people on the Democratic side of the conversation. And Maura Sullivan's ad is a general election, military themed kind of service ad that lands right in the middle. Now, yes, does she attempt to align herself with former President Barack Obama, whom basically everybody on the Democratic side of the aisle loves? Sure. And that's a move in the right direction, but it does raise some questions about her alignment in with the military and these conversations with progressives, and whether that's going to help, especially in the wake of real-time conversations about Keith Howard and his relationship with fellow Democrats, and he was the progressive that seemed to be the leading alternative. Are they going to turn to someone like Maura Sullivan, who's leading with her chin with military service? I'm not sure how effective that will be.
And let me flip it another way. People ask me all the time, national, because we're up here at NH Journal, so they're like, what the heck's going on? Where are your progressives? We don't understand it. You voted for Bernie twice in the presidential primaries. Next door, you got, Warren and Markey and Sanders and, Graham Plattner or whatever. And I would answer this way. Well, where is the progressive who's running as a progressive? In other words, where is the progressive equivalent of that Hollie Noveletsky ad that just comes out and says, MAGA, America, where is the progressive? I mean, I'm not saying that progressives are anti-American. I'm just saying the kind of red, white, and blue Fox News background. I would never choose that backdrop. In fact, I've been mocking Heath Howard and U.S. Senate candidate Krishma Manzoor for appearing at an event that they literally had the Iranian flag flying at. But I got to be honest with you. If I'm reaching the progressive activists, the people who we see around the country, the Palestinian and Iranian flag makes more sense than a red, white, and blue Yankee Doodle Dandy. Not because it's anti-patriotic, but because it's off message. And so that's what's interesting to me.
And I'll just say real quickly before we move on to some of the other ads, it is an interesting question about sort of, who are the progressives? How strong are their numbers in New Hampshire? What are we going to see? I think that's what makes the primary day this time around a very interesting exercise, because we'll get a chance to see how much volume and how much momentum might be behind some of the progressive voices who are in the primary. Do I think that Chris Pappas is going to lose the primary? Absolutely not. Do I think it's going to be close? No, I don't. But it doesn't have to be close for people like you and I to raise eyebrows and say, that was a bigger percentage than I thought. And I honestly think that there is a progressive undercurrent happening around the country right now that's driven for a number of different reasons. I think the Michigan primary outcome is driven a lot by the types of voters and conversations they're uniquely having among Democrats in Michigan. But I think there are unique progressive types of conversations happening in New Hampshire. Maybe it's a reflection of the strength or lack of strength of the progressive candidates here, but I do think that wave is building and will continue to build, and it will redefine conversations in the party, at least going forward, if not going next month.
So the old line is, true communism has never been tried. I would argue that in New Hampshire, true progressivism in their marketing thus far has not been tried. When someone comes out with a guns blazing progressive ad, I want to abolish ICE. I want a single payer healthcare. Then we'll see what's going on. Okay. I'm a big believer in negative ads. I think positive ads have limited utility. Most of the ads so far are, generally ID ad, in bio ads but there's some negative attacks. So you've had the negative ads attacking Johnny Sununu for, corporations, Johnny making money, whatever. You've had the attack ad on Chris Pappas for his former boyfriend, now husband's, he's a lobbyist and industry guy, and Congressman Pappas has sat on committees where that was a thing.
You've been dating a corporate lobbyist who actually was lobbying on behalf of Amazon at a time when you then went on to cast votes on Amazon's behalf on bills they lobbied you on. That is not true.
And then the other tough attack ad is the Cinde Warmington opioid ad.
Members of the addiction recovery community came to Concord calling on Warmington to end her campaign. They are upset about her past work for Purdue Pharma. She called OxyContin a miracle drug.
A miracle drug.
I think it's safe to say that the harshest ad is the Cinde Warmington opioid ad. But which one do you think is the most effective, or did I miss one?
No, I think you nailed them, and I think the Warmington opioid ad is by far the most effective. And when I saw it, I just think of one thing. I am reminded of my old friend Tom Rath, who has always been famous by coining the phrase, "If you are explaining, you are losing." And if for no other reason, because people don't necessarily know who Cinde Warmington is. And yes, I recognize that she ran just a couple years ago, but she lost and so there are a lot of people who just don't remember. They don't know who she is, even in the among the Democratic ranks. So she has a lot of work to do to introduce herself. And now her opponent is doing a good job of defining her and forcing her to have to keep talking about this one issue. Is it years old? You bet. Is it damaging? That ad is effective in really tying it close to something that we all know turned out kind of poorly for the opioid industry in general, and it forces her to keep talking about it. If for no other reason, it forces Cinde Warmington to just keep talking about it. That ad tells me two things. One, it plays strong in tested themes for those that, you know, were answering some poll questions. And two, for Kelly Ayotte's team to be going after her this early and defining her this quickly like that, it also shows that maybe the polls are right, that there is a sort of a blue wave that does potentially impact this race. And even for voters that don't necessarily know who Cinde Warmington is, there seems to be maybe an inclination among some to vote Democrat no matter what. And so this will blunt that. And you're right. Negative ads drive up negatives for a candidate way more effectively and faster than a positive ad drives up the positives for a candidate. But for Kelly to be able to have these ads out there sort of side by side, here's who I am, joking with a kid about a cell phone ban showing personality, and then the stark black and white images of a Cinde Warmington supporting, you know, the opioids. It's quite the contrast, and it's effective.
So there's so much here, and you've nailed a bunch of it. So thank you for laying that out. One of the things that just drives me crazy, I keep saying the same thing over and over again. We've been saying for months to the Warmington campaign, until you answer the question, they're not going to stop. As long as, you know, I use the football analogy. If I hand the ball to the fullback and he gets 10 yards over left tackle, why would I run any other play until you stop him? And so they haven't stopped it yet. And that's just poor political performance by the Warmington campaign, separate from whether she'd be a wonderful governor or not. It's just, you know, strategy wise, just not good. Second thing is, she still doesn't have an answer, like just generally, she keeps changing answers. And the other thing you mentioned is testing. Like we started off with the cell phone thing. The Ayotte team clearly has data. They are not running with this obscure story from 2002 because it makes them laugh in the back office. They're running because their data shows people see it and they don't like it. And finally, for Republicans, all you nuts who keep emailing news@insidesources.com, which is our email address, and saying, what are you talking about? Ayotte can't lose. It's a lock. I mean, guys, this is 2006. Anyone with a D can win. Anyone with an R can lose. It has nothing to do with candidate quality, money, whatever. Everybody, there is absolutely a non-zero chance that Kelly Ayotte is defeated, not because of Warmington, but because of Trump. Nobody can beat Trump. So that's fair. That's where that is. And Michael, I want to get to the other side, because we've done. I don't want to take so much of your time. I want to the other negatives. So
sure.
What do you think of this idea that this one nation, whatever, you know, these are the outside groups, but they're all aligned with the Republicans and with, you know, Senate, with Johnny Sununu, hitting Pappas on ethics? If you had asked me 6 months ago, where are they going to go? I would have said the obvious place you're going to go is strength versus weakness.
Congressman Chris Pappas dated an Amazon lobbyist and voted on multiple bills that Jeff Bezos' Amazon lobbied on. How typical for Washington.
If you don't have to like Johnny Sununu to know he's the kind of guy that if you're in a board meeting and he's unhappy with you, you're going to be sweating and tugging your collar. He's you know, warm and fuzzy is not Johnny Sununu. He's kind of, not a tough guy. He's not like raw, but you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you don't want to, you know, meanwhile, Representative Chris Pappas, for good or ill, not a big presence. I've said 1,000 times, boring Democrat is the most powerful force in New Hampshire politics. He's own boring. We just lost the Democratic First Nation primary. Where was he? Nowhere. New Hampshire's fighting for transportation dollars. We're the worst in the country. Where is he? Nowhere. You know, you can make a really good case. You've got a weak guy who's just not, you know, he's in the room and it doesn't matter. We need someone who's bigger, someone who's stronger. That's where I thought they were going to go, was strong and weak. Because what did Bill Clinton say? Americans would rather be strong and wrong than weak and right. But they went with ethics. You've seen a lot of ads. You also know Chris Pappas, who has very relatively high approval in New Hampshire. Yeah. What do you think of that path? Do you think that's a furrow to plant, or whatever the farming analogy is that I'm destroying here?
We're going to get a crop out of this.
Exactly.
So you raise a good question, and I think that the whole thing needs to be prefaced for people that don't already know, in case they aren't paying close attention. These are not ads coming from the campaigns. To your point, they're the third-party expenditures, which means, in my mind, these are strategic choices not being made in New Hampshire. They're being made in New York or in Washington, D.C., or wherever these places are headquartered, where they have to come up with the strategy. So to your point, they're looking at things that they can find that's going to, maybe move the needle on increasing negatives. I find it interesting, and whether they anticipated this as a shot against Chris's husband, or whether they just happened to have a moment of serendipity that the other third party ad is in support of Pappas, talking about, fighting corruption and yay, he's doing a great job. Tell him to keep going.
Chris Pappas is fighting back, co-sponsoring legislation to ban members of Congress from trading stocks.
By the way, for people that are like, why would I ever make a phone call like that? The laws for FCC independent expenditures require a call to action, which is why that they're set up like that. It's also why candidates will say, I approve this ad because. It's the rules of the game for creating these ads, and the language is a little bit silly and the structure is a little bit ridiculous, but that's what they're doing. So the call to action of one saying you're doing something for yourself because you're voting on issues that your husband could benefit from, versus you're fighting Trump corruption, I almost feel like they might cancel each other out just a little bit. And Michael, I think the reason why this one's potentially a miss is because Chris Pappas is quite well known by the constituents in New Hampshire. Like you said, his positives are reasonably good. He's a likable guy. Is he a firebrand politician that you're going to follow through the gates of hell? No, he's not that kind of a guy. He never has been. But he's known. He's authentic in who he is. And I think an ad like that, sort of going after the character and raising questions, especially when it's something that most people, if anybody, have ever even heard of with these connections, I don't think it lands the punch as effectively. But I also think that third-party ads don't land punches as effectively because they're going off of stat playbooks that are developed by a voting record and not necessarily known by the candidates. The campaigns tend to throw better punches, which is why I'm not sure that the anti-Sununu ads are going to be or are as effective in attacking and driving up his negatives as well.
Right there. What do you think of the Epstein angle that has been tried? Scott Brown has tried it in a mailer. That's it's been out. It's on social media, whatever. Do you think that there's once again mileage to be made? I'll stick with that metaphor. Is there mileage to be made from saying Johnny Sununu, he's hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein, and his name, or maybe it was his dad's, is in some email somewhere one time. Go get him. It seems like a stretch to me, but then again, maybe I'm wrong.
Here's the alignment. An accusation like that, like you and I are we're in the kitchen getting dinner ready, and we hear that ad in the background. It's gonna catch your attention. Here's the difference between the effectiveness of that ad and what I think is the ad we just talked about with Kelly against Cindy in the opioid lobbyist piece. Cinde Warmington was a representative of the industry, did do those things. There is truth there, and that, Cindy will want to argue context and timing and relevance, but the John Sununu ad of being on Epstein Island, there's zero evidence of it. He is aggressively and strongly repeatedly denied the veracity of being at all in that universe. So because it is probably, it's a fog of war thing, Michael. Like, we weren't even sure exactly which John Sununu they are talking about. And there's a case to be made. It could be the senior, not the junior, and that even he has no ties to the Epstein piece. It's just a name in some emails. So because of that, it's a glancing blow at best. And because Sununu can come out strong and say, this is nonsense, I just don't find that to be an effective attack.
Okay. So let's wrap up with this, and that is Stefany Shaheen, widely viewed as the front runner in the first CD for Democrats because of her mom. No one argues this because of her resume or accomplishments. Everyone agrees. I know this is totally a nepo baby thing, which, by the way, is fine. I mean, in the state of Sununus, it's hard to complain about that. I mean, there are plenty of.
We've got it on both sides of the ballot.
Hey, New Hampshire, went with Hillary Clinton in the presidential primary, despite the fact that her only credential was I was married to Bill Clinton. So, and this is a thing. But I do think that the marketing. She has an ad where she promises that she's going to raise hell with Trump. I'm a Trump hell.
I'll raise hell with Trump and the insurance companies to lower your costs.
And once again, it's the matching the message to what people know and don't know. If you tried to say that, Stefany Shaheen was a crook or whatever, I think people, what are you talking about? He's not a crook. But at the same time, if Stefany Shaheen tries to say, I'm a hell raise, I'm going to raise hell with Donald Trump, I don't even know that you would send a bad meal back at a restaurant. I don't know. That one, what are your thoughts?
Fair enough. No, well, and you're right. And this is, so I hear what you're saying, sort of like the appearance and delivery versus the substance of it. So let me just say, I think that Stefany Shaheen's ad is an effective one on content, because when you lay it side by side against what Maura Sullivan's bio ad is right now, Maura is introducing herself. Stefany Shaheen, though she needs to do that to differentiate and say, I'm not my mom, I am my own person, because the nepotism is a double-edged sword. The name ID component of it allows her to do something slightly different. Anybody who knows the Stefany Shaheen family story knows that her eldest daughter, Ellie, has had fights with diabetes for years. And so she's been in these trenches. These ads linking healthcare as a top priority not only align with her personal story, which I find is an effective and compelling one, but it also, I think, aligns again with homework-driven, data-driven messaging that goes into ads. And healthcare is a very important topic consistently among Democratic voters. So for her to tie that to, I'm fighting to fund this while the president is doing these other sort of, personal pet projects, I think that aligns with the cynicism and the frustration that all voters have, not just Democratic primary voters, that could be attractive. Your point about raise hell, when just like her mom, she doesn't necessarily have that sort of like pugilistic vibe about her, but she's getting it out there. And when she does talk about her daughter's fight, you do see a very different emotional sentiment from her on that topic. So I think it is a good, smart, safe place to go. And I think it's a very effective contrast to Maura's need to have to keep reintroducing herself as a newer face to Democrats in New Hampshire. Stefany doesn't have that problem with her last name, but she does still have to introduce who she is. So it's threading a needle, no doubt, to your point, Michael, but I think it's effective because it's going into a topic that she can use so effectively with her family's story.
You only said one thing I disagree with, and that is her need to make sure people know it's her and not her mom. She would be totally happy if everyone thought it was her mom. That would not bother her at all. Johnny would be totally happy if everybody's voting for Chris. They just want the votes. They don't care how they do it. Listen, you've been terrific. I'm going to throw a curveball at you. This is unfair. We didn't mention this. Do you have a favorite political ad, state, local, whatever, of all time? I love the ads where I love the ads. This has been done in several markets. I think the classic one was in Kentucky, where the guy has been a no-show in his job. Where's Bill? And they get the bloodhounds. No, that's a good one too. But they do the bloodhounds, and they have the guy, where's Bill? And they're looking. The bloodhound runs in the place. He's not here fighting for taxes, whatever. He's not. I know it's hokey, but man, when like you mentioned, dogs are a winner anyway. So at least I love the bloodhound ads when they see him. He's been down in Washington and all those bad people. We need him right here. I love that ad. Do you have a favorite? One of a favorite, maybe?
I have a couple that just stick out, and I don't know if you remember this from many years ago when John Sununu was running against Shaheen in the Senate race, way before you. They turned the Shaheen team turned a twist on his phrase when they were trying to tie him in Congress to certain issues that were bad votes, right? The whole bad votes on Congress thing. And the turn of the phrase was, who knew? Sununu.
Nice.
It was one of those. It was an earworm turn of a phrase that I remember in that cycle. Everybody remembered, and it still sticks in my day. So, like audio wise, the who knew Sununu one was one, but the one that I think that I remember the most, and it's not even all that old. Do you remember when Eddie Edwards, our assistant commissioner of safety, ran for Congress in the first CD, and he had a badass workout regimen routine video? It was like, I want to say it was like super dark shadows, and he's like pumping iron, and I mean, the guy's built like a brick you-know-what house, and he's strong, he's tough, and he was using that as a very strong visual analogy. I've never seen a candidate put themselves into the symbol of strength the way Eddie did, and I mean, let's face it, nobody else could pull it off the way he is. He could be a professional weightlifter. The guy is just stacked.
He's jacked.
But I just remember that ad being like a shocking one to me. I'm like, all right, here's here's a dude for Congress who's like pumping iron and sweating his butt off, and like visually, it was just like, whoa, Eddie, okay, man, that one I remember.
That's absolutely great. You remember Where's the Beef? That's a classic. You got to remember.
Oh my God, yes.
My favorite ad of all time is as a fake political ad from Volkswagen, which Volkswagen didn't actually run back in the 70s. It was a National Lampoon ad, and it showed a Volkswagen floating, and it said, if Ted Kennedy drove a Volkswagen, he'd be president today. So hard to beat ads like that. Scott Spradling, hard to beat great insight like yours. Thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Michael.